So what causes politicians, especially UK politicians, but not just UK politicians, to nearly have a heart attack every time it seems that Scottish independence is coming up? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and one of them is that it looks like if the Scots succeed in getting independence, then it might be that the Brits might want independence too. And what do I mean by this? Well, we need to get out from underneath the yoke of our current establishment. It's been there for too long. There's too big a bureaucracy. I mean, for God's sake, we used to control half the world, and we actually had a smaller civil service when we controlled half the world than we do now. But there's other things as well. Finance and the big banks. Nobody's really satisfied with what the banks have been doing. Nobody at all. So let's have a look and see exactly what it is that they're really worried about. So let's have a look at Iceland. What happened? Because after all, Iceland was one of the worst countries hit by the financial crash. All three of their national banks just imploded. Well, Iceland's president came up with this wonderful quote here. Iceland's president explains how his country recovered so quickly from the recession. The government bailed out the people and imprisoned the banksters. The opposite of what America and the rest of Europe did. Yep, Iceland actually went after the people who caused the crisis. Now, Iceland has been recovering after they kicked out the international banks. They kicked out all of the central banks. They even told the International Monetary Fund to close its office and get out of the country, and gave them a week to do it. Now, even Bloomberg says that since the Depression, Iceland has turned in an impressive performance. It has actually repaid International Monetary Fund rescue loans ahead of schedule. Growth this year will be 2.5%. This was in 2013, this article was written. Better than most developed economies. Unemployment has fallen by half. Now you compare this performance to America or the UK or even Scotland. So what did they actually do? Well, they bailed out the homeowners. Homeowners with negative equity, the country offered write-offs that would wipe out debt above 110% of the property value. They didn't give any money to the banks, they just stood back and let the banks collapse. Then bank loans that were indexed to foreign currencies were declared illegal. So they raised a lot of international debt, basically. And they did all this for their citizens. They didn't do it for the government. They didn't do it for the banks. They did it for their citizens. And this, after all, is really what a government is meant to be. It is meant to be for the people. Not for the banks, not for big businesses. For the people. Now, they prosecuted all the people who seemed to have caused the crisis, which provided a real disincentive instead of fines, which are actually paid from your money. When people say that oh, our bank has received 2 billion in fines or 15 billion in fines or whatever, guess who pays for that? You do. It's not the bank. They take it from their depositors and from the profits their depositors would otherwise have made. Now, Iceland's special prosecutor has said it may indict as many as 90 people, while more than 200 face criminal charges. Can you imagine that going on in anywhere else? Now, let us suppose that Scotland take this to heart. What are they going to do? They're going to tell the other banks to get out of their country, any bank that's not based in Scotland to get out of their country. Possibly they'll start up their own currency. Maybe even it would be a cryptocurrency. Who knows? Nobody knows at the moment. But can you imagine what this would do to the banking industry, to actually have a country that is close to one of the major financial centres that kicks them out and then does extremely well? And can you imagine what will happen when the UK population sees this and realises this? Because this whole Iceland situation hasn't been publicised. You look in the mainstream media and you will see very little about it. In fact, when I first saw that Iceland was making a success of it, it was in a 2 centimetre high column article in the Daily Mail, buried about 6 or 7 pages back. I don't think anyone read it, to be honest. Stunning. So you can see, by what's been going on in Iceland, they're really worried that we might escape the yokes of the big banks, of the IMF, and go our own and make a huge success of it. Because I have no doubt that Scotland, if they become independent, will be extremely successful financially. The Scots have always been a canny race. But there's other things that worry them as well. And those things are military. So let's have a look at those.
It really was me. It happened to Scotland. It shrunk on a map, while England has grown to fill up a gap. We're learned to the squeal, to start at the top.
So what else are our illustrious leaders concerned about? Well, the Ministry of Defence has an enormous amount of land that they use in Scotland, and possibly the worst loss for them would be Faslane, which is our only really large nuclear submarine base. I mean, where are we going to park our large nuclear submarines if we lose Faslane? And I have seen and heard people who are involved with the Scottish independence movement talking about the possibility, because our politicians turned around and said, oh, of course, if Scotland split off, they'd have to organise their own defence. But they're talking about the possibility of perhaps leasing Faslane to Putin. Now, this makes more sense than you would think, because there is quite a large Russian population in Scotland, and they've traditionally enjoyed really good relationship with the Russians because, let's face it, Russian boats, trawlers and military boats are often coming into Scottish ports. But it's not just that. If you take a look, the majority of our army training seems to be done in Scotland on Scottish bases. And here's a whole big list of them. And you've got, under DTE Scotland, this is an actual MOD leaflet. You've got all these training areas, Barry Budden and Castle Law, and it goes on and on and on. But the thing that's the real jewel in the crown is kind of buried at the bottom of here, and or near the bottom, and that's Cape Wrath. Now, Cape Wrath is in the extreme north of Scotland. It's huge, 25,000 acres. It's got sea cliffs, it's got a tidal loch, and very arduous terrain. And it's used as a naval bombardment range and an air bombing range, a tri-service facility, and that use has become more popular in recent years. Why is this? Europe. This is the only range in Europe where you can actually have live fire exercises with all 3 services involved and drop real bombs. I mean large bombs, 1,500 pound bombs, and get your troops used to real warfare. And the loss of this would be unthinkable for Europe. So hence Scotland's insistence currently that they're going to stay in Europe. But whether they do or not, I don't know, because if they have to make a separate application and that means that they have to join the euro currency, I know that the Scots won't stand for that. So maybe the Scotland will come out of Europe, and this will also help their recovery. So there's all these things that are negatives for Britain, and Britain's desperately trying to point out negatives for Scotland, and to be honest, there aren't that many. Now, with all these factors coming into play, it's really no wonder that our political leaders and even the royal family have started to panic. There is a very real chance that the UK population might suddenly turn around and decide, well, look at what Scotland's done, look at what Iceland's done, why can't we do this? And before you know it, you will have a free and independent England as well as a free and independent Scotland. And that is a situation, a major country comes out from underneath the yoke of the elites that they cannot really countenance, because if a major country does it, other major countries are bound to follow suit all over the world. So there is an old Chinese curse that says basically, may you live in interesting times. I think we're all cursed at the moment, because I think we live in very interesting times. So if you like this video or you feel passionately about the issues involved, please share it, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Bye.
It's really with me. Good having to Scotland, it's shrunk on a map, while England has grown to fill up a gap. We're learned to squeal, to start to